homesteading, they're canning every food, like they are getting ready for the apocalypse, which to be fair, in 2020 it really did feel like the apocalypse was happening. We got the fires, we had the giant killer bees, murder hornets, that's what it was.
Did we have something with sharks too, or was that a meme? I forget.
There was some Sharknado or something.
Yeah, I forget if it's a meme or if something actually happened. That's where we're at right now.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people, some people were like preparing for the apocalypse, and then some people were like, "Hey, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'm gonna spend my money," and they weren't making any because they were out of work. So.
But yes, that's actually was gonna be my next point there, where it's People were trying to spend more money, but they didn't have it to spend. So then a lot of people are now in debt due to not even just non-essential frivolous items, but even due to essential items that they couldn't afford. And now they're having to deal with the consequences at this point where a lot of people are back at work. I mean, most people are, back essentially to where they were beforehand, and they're having to catch up to what their spending was before.
This does also tie into the idea, and you see this especially with people's weight and people's approach to health during COVID, where some people are like, okay, I have all this time to myself, I'm going to look inward and I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to work out every day, well, not go to the gym, but I'm going to go to my home gym, or I'm going to create a home gym, I'm going to work out every day, I'm going to run, and I'm going to get myself healthy. And there are other people who are like, okay, I'm on the couch, ooh, look at that donut, ooh, here's another donut. And
not just that, but to be fair, stress eating is a huge thing that people do, and it's not a healthy coping mechanism, but people were very stressed and people were very scared, and so eating was the way that they dealt with that.
I actually remember in the beginning, people were calling it the quarantine 15, and then it was the quarantine 30, and then there were some people who understood French who were like 40-ish. For those of you who understand, that's exactly what quarantine means. It comes from back in the day with ships. They would quarantine for 40-ish days. So people would say 40-ish pounds after quarantine. And then, the quarantine 50. And it is just ridiculous. It is sad. I can't say anything because I also gained weight during quarantine, but that's because I actually had COVID. And I was not doing well afterwards.
I think all of us have had COVID. I've had COVID
three times.
Or even 4 times at this point. But at the same time, COVID is just one excuse for people to stay home and not work while still getting paid.
I would like to comment that is not necessarily true for a lot of people. I was stuck in bed both times that I had COVID.
I had COVID before COVID was even a thing. Meaning in February 2020, I had COVID, and so yeah, I was ahead of the curve. I'm ahead of all fads, so.
You know what? I actually had bronchitis right before COVID hit, and I remember my doctor being terrified of me.
So who knows? You may have had COVID before COVID was a thing.
Well, I tested positive for the flu, so I don't think so.
Well, I had COVID in March, and it lasted until April. It took me like 3 weeks to recover from it. So
Oof.
but when I went to go get the test for COVID, 3 weeks after I was feeling better, of course, I called them and said, did I actually have COVID? And they had congratulated me on losing my test results. So they aren't really sure if I actually had COVID, but they recommended that I quarantine for 2 weeks and, stay home and not work. And I was like, great, I'm glad that I'm over with now. And it's been 3 weeks since I actually went to you guys for a test.
But back to the idea of a no-spend month. So
now that we're live again, unofficially, for those of us just joining, what we're doing here is we are gathering a few self-fed topics into ChatGPT or OpenAI, which is an automatic AI-generated script or information creation. And the AI is going to be generating our key topic points for today, as well as at least 2 of our discussion questions. So the first topic that we have and have been discussing is the benefits and challenges of a no-spend month, which is the latest fad regarding social media. Lots of people have been not spending to reduce consumerism or simplifying their lifestyle. A study that's published by the Journal of Consumer Research in 2018 actually found that individuals who were exposed to consumerist messages such as advertising actually experienced increased feelings of dissatisfaction and decreased life satisfaction compared to those who are not exposed to these messages. So in essence, while ads actually get you to buy the products, they make you feel less like a person and more like a robot, is what I understand from that.
I mean, less satisfied doesn't necessarily mean more robotic.
Yeah.
It just means not happy with your purchase.
Yeah, that's where I got confused too. I was like, where did robots come into this? Did I just space out?
Well, being less satisfied with your purchase basically means you were robotic into buying the product.
Manipulated. That's more
realize
of
it, though?
manipulated rather than robotic.
Well, they were dissatisfied and they had a decreased life satisfaction, so they're just upset at themselves for the next X amount of years because they made this purchase.
I
Or
think it's
even, it doesn't necessarily say anything about purchasing. It just says the people who were exposed to advertising.
Yeah.
I don't think this ties into the purchase itself. I think it ties
True.
into the whole message which the advertising is portraying, which is a whole glamorous lifestyle,
that
which
you're not enough.
exactly, you do not have the private jet, you do not have the ability to go on a fancy holiday 4 times a year, and therefore you simply suck in your life, and that is the message which is relayed to you. And by buying the products and by feeding this whole machine, you are contributing to it. So, Rage Against the Machine.
My favorite thing though is advertisements for like organized type stuff, like, you know, organizing boxes, like those acrylic boxes that were a thing in 2020. I bought so many of
I
those.
have them.
Do you use them? It's a question.
I use a lot of them, but I also have, because I bought like a set that has like 30, so I use around half of them, and the other half is just waiting to be used. But I only bought them recently, so.
So I only recently started getting somewhat good at organizing. I have ADHD, undiagnosed of course, because
Oh, cool, mine's diagnosed.
so mine is technically, but not at an office. Like I have a psychiatrist aunt who like told my mom like, yeah, your daughter has raging ADHD, and mom was like, you're stupid. She does well in school. Stop it. But I like refuse to get medicated for it because I'm like, it makes me me. I like it in a way. But yeah, so I bought all these organizing stuff, and like it low key made me mad at myself. I was like, I've got all of these acrylic organizing type stuff, and I'm a wreck. I am a hot mess here. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, like, on a visceral level. I feel that.
Recently, I've gotten better at it, obviously. You can't tell by how my kitchen looks at the moment.
Well, using a lot of these points that you've brought up regarding the ADHD and the advertising, this is really what drives you to make these purchases. You know, people who have increased ADHD or, you know, impulsiveness, you know, that will increase the amount of purchases inherently just because you want everything you see, or you're trying to make up for something that you don't have.
That is true. People with ADHD do have a tendency to spend more impulsively. However, I don't feel like that really affected me as much just because of my family history. We're a family of survivors, so we were always taught, don't spend money, don't spend money, don't spend money, save, 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 don't mess with the government, don't mess with the government, pay your taxes, save money for taxes. You never know when the government's going to try and make you spend too much on taxes, and then they'll put you in jail, and it'll end up being a work camp.
Well, maybe that's where some people can take some saving to the next level, you know, when they're trying to do a no-save month, just spend less on taxes and more on food.
No, just adopt my grandpa.
No, so, I mean, actually, it's interesting because when it comes to the way that Srooly and I spend money, we actually sometimes have to, like, tell ourselves it's okay to spend on something that isn't essential, and we have to, like, have a conversation about it, because both of us are the type of people who have who don't find it that easy to spend money. And I don't even really know why, because thankfully my family has not been affected by, you know, any of the recent history, relatively recent, you know, the Holocaust, any of that stuff. So it's interesting because I have no idea why I'm like that, but it seems to be something that other Jews have too.
Okay. I would love to comment on that, but I've got a mini-human who needs feeding. I'll be right back.
Excellent. Enjoy. Well, some of the challenges of not spending in a month, short-term and long-term, you know, a few things that I can think of include if you're not spending on frivolous things, you know, that, you know, automatically decreases consumerism for the household in general, for yourself. You know, if you're not spending on, if you go to the mall and you don't spend on impulse purchases or whatever, then it's less likely that the mall is going to be around, assuming everybody did that. But if it's just one or two people trying to improve their overall lifestyle, I can see how that would be beneficial. And especially if you're doing it as like an overall improvement, and then at a later point in life, you'll go back to spending frivolously, or at least allocate yourself a budget to spend frivolously. That's, I guess I can see some benefits to that in this sense as well.
I mean, there's definitely a happy medium in the middle, because they say that personal finance is 80% behavior, 10% actual money, and it's all
What's
of
the other 10%?
how much money you make.
You said 80% behavior, 10% money. Where's the other 10%?
I'm looking
Sorry.
for the money to begin with, so that's where it is. The other 10% is me trying to find the money.
Okay, sorry, 20. My apologies, 20% money. But either way, the underlying concept, and that is something which we see over here across all the points which we're making, is that it's about being disciplined. It's about setting goals and realistic goals and then achieving them. And then that leads to overall happiness in your life. And this is probably not just true with your money, because if you are doing this with your money, you are probably doing this also with your fitness. You're doing this with your career goals, with your interpersonal goals, with your growth as a human, across all spiritual and mental aspects. So money, you could say, is probably just a reflection of that.
Okay, perfect. Well, another discussion question, what are some challenges of a no-spend month, and how can they be overcome? And the first thing that comes to mind with challenges is simply, people's desires and needs, and determining what's really frivolous and what's not.
Like, for example, what about entertainment? Is entertainment considered, if someone has, let's say, a Netflix or Hulu or something subscription, is that considered frivolous, or is that considered essential? And I think for every individual it'll be different.
I would disagree with that. I would say that any type of subscription service is generally a want as opposed to a need. Because if let's just say you lost your job, you're going to immediately cancel that subscription because you can't afford to pay for it anymore.
I'm referring to people specifically who are doing this only for 1 month. So the question is it worth it to undo it for 1 month to put it right back on the next month, or are you just going to consider that $10 or however much it is? To be honest, I have no idea how much these subscriptions cost.
A lot of streaming services allow you to pause them for a short amount of time. YouTube Premium allows you to pause it. Amazon allows you to pause the subscription for 1, 2, 3, 4 months at a time. Your internet bill as well, if you deem that non-essential. A lot of people have unlimited internet on their phone. They might not necessarily need internet in their home all the time. So if they want to do a no-spend month and really get down and grind, you can pause your internet for 30, 45 days, and then come back to it. It'll re-bill you 45 days later, but then you just won't have home internet for a month, and that might save you $75, or if you have cable, that might save you $150, $250.
That's cool. I didn't know that these subscription services had that option.
One issue which comes to mind when it comes to this whole idea of a no-spend month is, once the month is over, then the bounce back could be very uncontrolled, because for some people they are very extreme, where they could either go with no spending or they would be spending frivolously. I think the key, rather than having a no spend month, is to come up with some happy medium in the middle, again, where you are spending but you're doing so in a controlled, budgeted way, and like this you are more likely to have a more stable outcome.
I think that's more of setting yourself up for long-term success than just doing a no-spend month.
Exactly.
However, the no-spend month is a good reset, where it brings you back to reality of what you actually need in life in order to function. If you have 1 month where you say, I'm not going to spend anything frivolously, but then the next month you go ahead and resume your lifestyle, you're probably less likely to go ahead and, let's just say you canceled 3 of your subscriptions instead of pausing them, you're less likely to go ahead and re-enroll those subscriptions until 6 months down the line when you actually use the product next. The odds of you using all 5 of your music listening services on a subscription base every single day or even monthly is probably very low for most people. So if you have, let's say, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Premium, Panera Bread, I don't know what else, what other subscriptions.
Don't pay for music subscriptions.
Don't pay
sorry,
for Panera Bread.
that's gotta.
Oh,
All right, so some strategies to stay on track for the no spend month. If you were
just one final comment, when have social media fads ever actually resulted in long-term successful people? They're just fads. That's exactly what they are. You just need to keep that in mind.
Well, the whole point of social media is to bring enlightenment to different aspects of living that you might not have otherwise been exposed to.
And that never works. Social media is just a sham.
Well, to each their own. Every single person is able to pick and choose which pieces of the social media they incorporate in their life. You have a lot of the people who post these initial ideas on social media. A lot of times they've been doing them for years, and they just never shared them with anyone else. So if somebody else learning about it, even if one or two people end up utilizing that quote unquote fad, that might be enough to help that person move on with something else.
Okay, that's valid. I accept that.
Now, if you were to go ahead with a no spend month, what are some strategies that you would take to, keep on track and not go overboard and reduce your spending?
Don't go to the mall.
Budget.
Don't go to the mall with money.
Don't go to the mall with money. Okay, that's valid. Okay, don't go to the mall with money.
And budget. Did I mention that?
Well, the budget is definitely a long-term success plan.
Yeah.
I would incorporate that in our previous mention about the long-term goals and how to keep this no spend month ongoing for a longer period of time. But the budget is a great strategy for no spend month. A lot of people who've been posting about the no spend month have been saying that they've been able to keep their grocery budget down to $500 or $400, which is $100 a week for a family of 4 people. Just utilizing what you have in your closet, or in your pantry.
Another thing about that is to plan ahead, as in before you start the no spend month, you have to create a system that you're going to use throughout it, or else you're not going to be able to keep to it unless you know what you're doing.
So we actually also I deleted Amazon off of my phone, and
Yeah.
I took the credit cards off of my card
Yeah.
app.
So one of our strategies for no spend month, we've been doing this now for a couple of weeks, trying to, reduce our spending overall, is, remove the apps on your phone that, provide the easy access to spending. Amazon is one of the main culprits of that. It's very easy just to click a button and order everything you ever wanted from Amazon. But at the same time, your credit card is not going to really, afford that purchase necessarily. So reducing the access to frivolous spending, I think, is a key point. And then also, having a strict budget for this time. Even if you do no spend month for 1 or 2 weeks or even a couple of days, having, let's say, your Sunday is usually your major spend day. If you say, I'm not going to spend anything this Sunday, then that can always get you, one step further to your goals, whether that's saving up for something or, even just, having a little bit more room in your budget for the next week as well. Okay, excellent. With that in mind, one of the next topics that we have for the podcast today is the role of nutrition in disease prevention and management. Now, our delightful guest, who is an expert on this topic, is currently taking care of a baby, but mini human.
Currently giving it some nutrition.
It's
to
fortified with iron, too.
prevent diseases.
Fortified with iron.
And the eyes of this mini human are wide-eyed at the fact that it is receiving nutrition right now, as
Okay.
can be confirmed by looking at it.
Excellent. So, the whole idea behind this particular topic from ChatGPT was identifying how nutrition is able to prevent diseases and how it's beneficial. Of course, there's other factors in preventing and maintaining a healthy lifestyle overall. However, preventing diseases using good, solid nutritional advice, from a nutrition coach or a health coach or something similar, can be very beneficial to, the long-term goals of disease prevention. Now, a large study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2017 actually found that a dietary pattern that was rich in fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts actually resulted in a lower risk of cardiovascular disease, while a diet high in red and processed meat, sugar and sweetened beverages, and refined grains, so white bread, etc., actually associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, which I think a lot of people know inherently. A lot of people can tell you that, going to a fast food restaurant is bad for your health, but a lot of people don't acknowledge it or don't change their habits or anything like that when it comes to these when it comes to these points. So I think one of the large ideas is that while nutrition does play a large factor, one of the more important items that we have to look at is people's ability to change their daily habits. And I guess that kind of goes back to the no spend month, changing, not only changing your budget, but eliminating your access to all of these venues and outlets can really be a strong point when it comes to trying to improve your lifestyle and overall health in the long run.
Actually, another aspect in which these concepts are related is that there are a lot of people who use food, again, like I mentioned earlier, as a coping mechanism. And the amount of money that some people spend on fast food, on snacks, on all these different things is astronomical. Some people have spent like over $1,000 a month, and then some of them have, changed their life due to that. But there have been there's this YouTube channel that I like to watch that discusses different people who have spent a lot of money on different food items and how much money they've saved by thinking about what they're eating, making sure that they're consuming healthier food and in smaller quantities, and how they are interacting with food relates to how they interact with money as well in that way.
Right, and regarding the idea of red meat, this is an area where I am not 100% convinced by the evidence, because a lot of red meat which has not been adulterated by modern farming mechanisms, meaning where it's not been pumped with hormones, etc., has been shown to be extremely beneficial for you. And even fats, which previously were thought to be something which is bad for you, was actually not true, because the whole idea of the food pyramid and the way that we used to think of nutrition was actually written by lawyers. And the way that we look at sugar as being essential for the diet was sponsored by, I believe it was Kellogg's or Nestle.
Maybe Nestle. Sounds like
Nestle.
Sounds
Nestle.
like it's a Nestle thing.
Right. So
Don't fact check us on that. We're saying probably. We're not saying for a fact.
okay, so take this with a grain of salt. So we do have to consider that, like, a lot of the way we think about nutrition is too broad, and also when these studies are done, they're done on a cohort of people, but people are different. Some people do very well on the carnivore diet. Some people cannot eat meat. These things are very individual, and to make broad sweeping statements as to what works for everyone is, I mean, aside from cutting out junk food, which is just basically pure cancerous products, is a bad idea.
Well, heme iron itself, the type of iron found in animals, actually is considered a carcinogen. So it actually is proven to cause cancer. Now, causing a bunch of other health issues, you could argue about that. Basically, don't go on the carnivore diet. First of all, you need vitamin C. Okay, don't get yourself scurvy. That's gotta suck. I can't imagine going through scurvy in the year 2023. God, it's 2023. And also, you do need antioxidants if you're going to be having those carcinogens. I'm sorry, but you do.
I think that's really where a lot of these studies are lacking in detail. Well, while they do find that diets that consist of only vegetables and legumes and nuts and fruits and whole grains are associated with a lower risk of some of these diseases, I think they're also missing a point of including some of these foods can, possibly negate other diseases that are, more prevalent, by having these easy access to protein that eliminates, that makes it easier for, your digestive system to function correctly, and, having access to the fruits and vegetables alongside the protein, I think is really a major impact when it comes to, overall health and lifestyle. Now, by including some of these, important facts when it comes to, your daily life, I think a lot of it boils down to ensuring that you have the right habits when it comes to food as well. Making sure that you're eating on a schedule as opposed to whenever you want. I think that can definitely help your body, kind of balance out and function on a more level-headed basis. Whereas if you're always snacking on something that can either that can cause you to get out of control with your eating, or potentially that can cause you to eat something that you otherwise wouldn't have. If you just have 2 or 3 full meals a day, or even 1.5 full meals a day, that can eliminate your snacking on things that, might not necessarily be the healthiest as well.
I think it depends on the person. Some people, do better with snacking. They find that it helps them stay in control when it comes to the bigger meals, especially if they're snacking on healthier things like popcorn or fruit, even veggies. Like a lot of people snack on, celery, carrots, snow peas, peppers. Like those are great snacks, and they can actually help keep you full. I actually remember we were talking about this yesterday. When I was little, there was a comment of Middle Eastern food is not fatty. That is not true. That is not true. I'll give you my favorite food growing up was called ma'uda. I'll tell you what ma'uda was. It was potatoes that were peeled, then fried. Then there was kibbeh in there. You know what we did with kibbeh? We fried it. Then we added very fatty meats and the bone, and we put it all in there, and we had it cook more with more oil. And you know what? That was everyone's favorite food, and this was a staple.
Sounds delicious.
It was.
It is very delicious.
You've tried ma'uda before?
Yes, I have.
Oh, it's great.
It's so good.
But it is extremely fattening. The secret to why a lot of Middle Easterners are skinny is because A, we've got a wedding every day, if not more than a wedding. I remember one time I went to a sweet 16, a bar mitzvah, and 2 weddings all on the same night. And you gotta dance at every single party. So you're doing a lot of exercise, but then also we have an emphasis on vegetables. So I remember we would run around, and my grandma would be cutting vegetables for the salad, and maybe 25% of those vegetables would actually go into the salad. The rest would be given to us while we were running. My grandma would scream, "Hati, hati, hati, take this, take this, take this. Why you no eat?" If you didn't take it. If you don't take it. She knew 3 sentences. She knew 4 sentences in English, 3 of which she learned for her citizen test, which were, I go to car, I put on seat belt, I drive very fast. And then, why you not eat? And it was mostly regarding vegetables and nuts and fruit. She very rarely would say, why you not eat for cookies.
I think that really, hits the next discussion question right on the nose, with how social and cultural context can influence your dietary habits and the risk of chronic diseases. By all of these social and cultural foods, a lot of times they're designed for a healthy environment. You look for any kind of cultural food, not American food, but just cultural food, is designed around a center point of either vegetables or of protein, meat, or grains, going back to the roots of, some of the things that have a lower, disease risk. A lot of times that's what cultural food really is. Even if it has fried items or something in it, the fact that it has these vegetables or grains as a base, I think is a really key point.
But even American food, for example, the traditional farmer's breakfast, which the people in the Midwest in America used to eat, had about 5,000 calories inside the meal. But it made sense considering the fact that people will be eating such a meal and then they'll be going out and working in the field all day, and they will not really be eating much for the rest of the day until they came home 12 hours later. And when you are working for 12 hours a day in a very physically laborious job, tilling the land, 5,000 calories for breakfast makes perfect sense.
And also beyond that, like even in a negative way, there are certain, a lot of children take on the dietary habits of their parents because that's just what they grew up with. And so there's this new phenomenon, I don't know how new it is, but I recently heard about it, called fast food babies, where this is how they grow up. They eat fast food their entire life. They haven't had a vegetable, like a fresh vegetable, ever.
What's a vegetable?
So point is they grow up thinking that this is normal, this is what food is, and they're going to grow up with a very negative relationship with food, with health. And a lot of times also people kind of use it as, oh, this is just runs in my family, this disease, this negative physical being. But a lot of it is related to the food that they eat and the food that they grew up with in their household, that their parents were eating, that now they're eating, that they could change if they take it on themselves.
So I don't know how many people here are familiar with Dr. Michael Greger. I know you two should be because I talk about him all the time. I've been a fan of his since I was 15. I love his work. But in his book, How Not to Diet, he actually talks about this, the quote-unquote fat gene that people love talking about. When it was actually studied, only accounted for about 10% of obesity cases. And that was wild to me. Because I remember when I was a kid, I was a chubby kid. Like a real chubby kid. Like when I was pregnant, I wasn't as big as I was as a kid. That is true, by the way. I did not get as heavy as when I was younger, when I was pregnant. So I remember being told by my doctor, hey, I think that this is just your genetic weight, because at the time I was eating like 1,000 calories, or at least that's what I counted. I was eating about 1,000 calories and still not losing a pound. And he was like, yeah, I think that you're just genetically obese. And then one day I just started changing my habits and the weight fell off. And I remember not even believing the doctor when she told me that I was, X amount of weight. I was like, no, your scales are broken. And she went, no, they're not. No, you look like you're that weight. Don't pat yourself on the back. You still need to lose a lot of weight, girl. But you're getting there. This is my pediatrician, by the way.
I guess that shows you the power of doctors, where they're able to, pinpoint exactly what's wrong and kind of help you out. Sometimes you should trust them. Sometimes you shouldn't, but a lot of times you should, especially when they give advice about, their scale is probably accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to trusting them, you probably should treat them as an advisor and take what they have to say as advice rather than as gospel. So take what they have to say, consider it. If it's wise, follow it. If it's not wise, and these days you could actually do your research as long as you are able to be critical and use actual,
a lot of times you can get a
accurate
second opinion
sources
as well.
Exactly, but what is Dave Ramsey's quote when it comes to setting up a council?
Have many people.
Yes, he specifically always quotes one specific quote from the Bible. He always quotes King Solomon.
I don't know what the quote is.
But essentially the idea is that wise people have many people advising them on what to do, and then they take and synthesize the advice of these many people, and they carry it out, I guess.
Excellent.
There's also about having professionals in that field. For example, doctors aren't taught that much about nutrition. Like, I remember even in nursing school, and we were supposed to be like the educators of nutrition. We spent an hour on nutrition, and that was it. And I was like, and at that time, I had already lost a lot of weight. I had already done a lot of research. I had already been obsessed with Dr. Michael Greger and Dr. Dean Ornish and like all these doctors. And I remember just being like, this is not it. This is not it. We're supposed to educate our patients on nutrition after an hour of learning this. And you know what we learned? The food pyramid.
Which was written by lawyers.
Yes. It was absolutely ridiculous. And especially even like the WIC program, and I love the WIC program and I think it's amazing, but I found it funny that there were a couple of things where they were like, choose the low fat option, like low fat yogurt, and I was like,
Low fat yogurt's a scam.
low fat yogurt means more sugar yogurt.
Exactly, it's a scam.
Exactly.
Hey, sometimes sugar is good for you.
When?
It's not
Every
better than
day.
fat.
If
With
you
coffee, with ice cream.
Aside from running a marathon.
Yeah, if you are someone who either struggles to eat, then it might be a good idea to eat more processed food. I wouldn't say eat tablespoons of sugar, but if you struggle to eat, having processed foods is an easy way of getting calories. If someone, they used to suffer from anorexia, now they suffer to eat altogether, or someone's going through a little bit of a depressive state and they're struggling to eat, it might be useful for them to add a little bit more oil into their diet, a little bit of sugar. Just don't go crazy because we don't want you getting diabetes. But
I love
yeah,
sugar. Sugar's delicious.
Great.
sugar is delicious.
Just saying.
Well,
I'm putting it out there. I love sugar.
everyone loves sugar. We are biologically created to love sugar.
And I don't prevent myself from having it. I just be
Excellent.
smart about it.
Well, with that in mind, thank you all for listening to the Brewed Awakenings, and we hope you enjoyed this episode and found it either helpful or informative, or none of the above. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us in the comment section or by reviewing us on your favorite podcast.
And before we go, we fed to ChatGPT this question. Explain the status of ChatGPT as a pirate. So who would like to have the honors of saying that?
I'm gonna skip for now. We're gonna review this next week when it comes to adding this as a key discussion.
I just saw it and I just saw it because it came out because ChatGPT was offline on my computer, and it is just hysterical. That's why I put it in.
All right.
But
Well, if one of you guys wants to visit ChatGPT, you can definitely do so at chat.openai.com. But don't forget to subscribe and see all of our future episodes.